All right, so let's go ahead and start putting things together here. We're going to go ahead and create our first Fragment project. So I'm going to go to File, of course, in our Android Studio, New. Let's say New Project. This one I'm going to call Fragment Introduction. And I'm going to change this Fragment Intro as such. Okay, that's perfect. I'm going to say Next and make sure that the API level is at least over 419. So I'm going to keep at 6.0, which is API 23. Go Next. And I'm just going to go ahead and get a blank activity there as such. I'm going to name that as that. Say Finish. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Res folder here to Layout. We're going to copy, right click, and we're going to say, copy, right click, and we're going to go ahead and say paste. So now we're going to have the second XML file here. I'm just going to call this Fragment main as such. Say OK. And there we go. And of course, both of these are the same, except we're going to change a few things here. Let's go to our fragment. And for our text here, which is coming from for our text, we're going to just say here, hello from Fragment. All right. Save. I'm going to go to our activity here. I'm going to change this to, this is just hello world. That's fine. Now, if you go ahead and run this, of course, you will see that we will see this hello world because we haven't really put together so that we can actually get our Fragment XML file. Let's take a quick look here. And there you go, still says hello world. But the idea here is for that to actually use Fragment and see this hello world in our application. Okay, so once we create, so going back to what fragments, so going back to the idea of fragments, that each fragment is going, so going back to understanding what a fragment really helps us. So we have to remember that each fragment, whenever we create a fragment layout, we have to also create a fragment class or an activity that extends fragment. All right, so next what we're going to do here, because we have our fragment main, we'll need then to create a Java class that will control our fragment here. So I'm going to say right click, new, Java class. Let me call this main fragment. And if I need, I can just put a super class here. I'm going to say fragment, which means it's going to extend from a super class called fragment. Now make sure that when you do that, make sure to get the fragment that says Android support v4 app. The reason why we need to use support is because previous versions of Android do not support fragments. So if we use the straight fragment as this one that says Android app, then we are going to, then the application won't run on older devices. So we need to use the support because we want to be able to support and make sure that our app runs on older devices. Okay, like that. Say okay. There we go. And of course, we could have done the same thing from here, right? Extends and fragment. But since we got that opportunity there, we were able just to go ahead and do that. Okay, it's very good. Now the next thing we need to do is to create an actual constructor, an empty constructor for this class for this to work. Now the reason why we do this is because on different devices, and when users change the orientation of device, we need to have an empty constructor for things to work. Otherwise, things could go wrong and our app could crash. Okay, so that's a required thing here. So I'm going to say public main fragment as such, and it's just going to be an empty one as such. Okay, perfect. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to add now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add another override method that will allow us to inflate our fragment main here, which means to go and grab our fragment main XML and create our view, right? Okay, so what we do, we can either do two things. We can go ahead and start typing, say on, say, view There we go. There's on view created. Now there's a few flavors here. We want to get this on view created. The first one here that has the inflator, container, and a view group. So I'm going to say next, enter like that. Okay, there's a few things there. Let me go ahead and explain real quick what all of these are. Okay, so we have the inflator here. This object, the inflator will allow us to inflate, which means to be able to fetch our fragment main XML or any other fragment we've created separately in our layouts. Okay, we need a container, the container is going to be the place or the view in which we are going to put our inflated or our XML file. Now our bundle save state instance here will give us access to all of the states of our activity and fragment. Let me go feed lines there. Perfect. And you notice here we have the super, we're calling the inflator, and container, and of course the saved instance state. So this indeed on create view, as the name implies, this is where we're going to be able to create the actual view to inflate those views and put them in the right place. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to get rid of this. We are going to implement our own on create view return here. So I'm going to go ahead and say view because I want to create a view object which we can actually inflate and get all of the information, all of the view, and get the fragment view ourselves here. Okay, so I'm going to say view is equal to, I'm going to use our inflator object there, inflator. As such, I'm going to say that inflate. We want to inflate from somewhere. Where we want to inflate from our r.layout. I'm going to get the fragment main, which is this fragment here. Okay. The next parameter here is going to be the root layout container. I'm just going to go ahead and pass the container. Okay. And last but not least is going to be the attached to root. I'm going to say false because I don't want to attach anything to the root. Like that. Of course, now I have my view. I'm going to go and say return view. That's okay. So this view here, now we are inflating, getting our fragment layout, which is this main here, and we're passing the container, which will hold all of these, the fragment main, which will hold our XML, and then we're passing false for whether we are attaching this to the root. Okay, so now we have returning. Now on create view, we are able to return an actual view that it's ready to use. Now, there's two ways in which we can actually invoke and get this fragment to show in our application. We could do that straight using XML, okay, or we can do that programmatically. I'm going to show you first how to get this fragment main contents into our XML activity here, which is connected to our Android, to our main activity. Okay, so let's go to our activity main here. So what we can do here, I'm going to go ahead and comment all this out. What we can do here, we can actually create a fragment as such, and then I'm going to say match parent, and we will need to give an ID. I'm going to let's go ahead and give an ID. The ID is going to be, let's say, my fragment as such. And then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give an attribute called name. Okay. Now this attribute here just connects our fragment here to the class that is going to be controlling, or that it's going to be connected to our fragment. In this case, because Android Studio is smart enough, it knows exactly which class is going to be connecting with our fragment because we only have one fragment class. Okay, so we say enter. You notice it has the entire package name, and at the end we have the main fragment. Okay, so it's now pointing to our main fragment here. All right. So of course we can then, now what we can do, we can say tools, and we can say layout is equal, and we can say at layout, and we can just pass our fragment as such. Okay, so now what happens is if we were to run, in fact, we can actually just see, there we go, it says hello from fragment, right? Because we got rid, now remember this, we are inside of our activity main, we're not inside of our fragment main. We took the contents of our fragment main here and we inserted inside of our fragment, right? Because we said here layout is going to be fragment main, which is this one here. All right, so that's one way to do it. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to do it programmatically, meaning using Java, which is the preferred way to do it because it will give us more flexibility. All right, perfect. So I'll see you in the next video.